Hello, welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Hudsonite editor and publisher Michael Foley, and with me in this segment is Paul Berger, Jamie Johnson, and Bruce Hansen from the Process Stewards team tasked with engaging the community on the future needs of secondary school space. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
What exactly is your team?
I'll let Paul start us off.
Well, we are the Process Stewards team, and the idea there is to try to develop a process, a stepped process to get the community engaged on how to handle the secondary school issue. And we used the models that were developed by the International Association of Public Participation, and the idea there was to work with both inside the school district and outside the school district. So we're divided, our team is divided between community members and those are on the board and the work for the administration. So I'm one of the outies, one of the people that are within the community, and Jamie and Bruce represent the school board itself.
Okay, and this process was born out of last year's referendum failure. Kind of went back to the drawing board and decided to get kind of the whole community engaged in a discussion on what should be done about solving some of the space issues with schools. Instead of just moving forward with a board kind of led solution, you kind of just want to get everybody's input.
Well, yeah, and I think it's that, but in addition to that, if you look at the referendum failing, it really changed the conversation in the community. I think a lot of people are excited and support education in Hudson, and so it's not an issue whether or not there's support. It's getting the collaboration within the community to a point where everybody believes in the communication and supports the decisions that the board is tasked to move forward with. So that momentum that came from the failed referendum really brought the board to a decision to say, we have got to get to a point where we really get great community engagement and participation. And really, I think while it's been a lengthy process, we've tried to make sure that that process has been followed as best as we can to ensure that all community members have an opportunity to speak up.
So you said it's been a lengthy process. What exactly have you guys been up to the last, I guess, since January, February?
Right. Well, even before January started, as Paul pointed out, he was one of the community members that pointed us in the direction of that specific website and that model, which has been used both for local issues and all the way up to federal issues. And Paul's had experience with that and beyond. So international. In fact, they use that same model when talking about international waterways and so forth. But here, we needed to start somewhere, and there were people spontaneously talking in the community, hey, we want to get together, even people with diverse viewpoints, whether it was on that specific referendum or what it would need to take to get to a yes. And that's what this is all about, is building consensus. And you can't do that with just 7 board members. You need to have the whole community involved. And that's what we've been doing since January. It's a 4-stage process. We're kind of towards the end of stage 3. That's where I consider us right now. We've had stage 3 was always going to be talking about creating and developing the options of what we're going to do. But it took months to get here where we are now. And anybody that wants to know, they can go on the school website, which is www.hudson.k12.wi.us. And there is, you can spend hours literally on that side alone just clicking and reading all the work that we've been up to, which is really opening up to the community. Almost all of the input is from the community. We have some experts involved. We've involved a demographer, and we've involved an architect. But outside of their work, everything else pretty much coming from the community.
Mm-hmm. For people who don't have hours and hours to spend reading through all this stuff online, what can we say to kind of recap some of these steps that have taken place over the past 9 months?
Well, Paul's done a good job of that. Working also, Tracy Habishaline is our communications director. She's got a document on there that kind of is an executive summary of each of the 3 stages. But I don't know, I'll turn over to Paul.
Well, the first step was really to get together what the issues are and making sure that the right information is available. So that was a lot of getting that. So the requirements, standards, the local, and hearing what people had to say. Are we getting the right stuff for people to start to make informed decisions?
A lot of data.
A lot of data. The second one was people to come forward and say, what do you think we need? Give the vision of the schools going forward. What would you like to see the schools to look like? What are your values that we can capture and try to put together? So that was all the stage 2, putting all of those thoughts together.
And that was an in-person workshop, actually held on different nights. We held six of them over the span of about 10 days, one of which was even on the night the Badgers played in the national championship. But we got in-person involvement, but we also had online throughout that stage 2.
And there are several meetings, several informal meetings throughout the community that just kind of bubbled up, and we tried to, as best possible, do it through face-to-face, but a lot of people are resistant to that, so we've also pushed out as much as we can on the web. And so,
what sort of response did you get? Did you get a lot of participation?
I think it wasn't so much quantity as it was quality. I mean, I think we did, and it's been building in terms of quantity. I think we were around a couple hundred, just shy of 200 in the first stage. We went over 200 for the second, and now we're over 300 in stage 3 as far as people weighing in. But some of the comments go on for a long time. Some are very short and sweet. It's kind of like get her done. That's kind of what we've gotten, some of those comments. And but some more with substance, and that's why this is building up to our next workshop.
Okay.
I think there was also some resistance at first, and I think people are starting to warm up that they thought that we were working behind the screens making decisions, when that's really not the case. What we're really trying to do is facilitate a community-wide dialogue, and that's really what we're about. I don't know where these two views guys stand on these issues, and it doesn't really matter. It's really making sure that everybody, it's possible, get everybody to come to the table and tell us what their thoughts and views are, whatever they might be.
And then you're collecting all of those views and thoughts, as well as some of the other data.
That's the stage 3.
What are some of the other data that you've been collecting? Obviously, some demographic information. What other pieces are?
Well, I think the demographic information is pretty critical. It was a hot topic last time. If you think about all the discussions that took place, we want to try and get to as best of a realistic number as we can. So I think that's probably one of the bigger hot topics. We pulled a lot of information around the school needs. So what does 21st century learning look like, and what are some of the needs in the schools, and are people really educated on what some of those needs might be? You know, some may think that a classroom and 4 walls and some chairs is what 21st century learning is, but it really is evolving, and our kids here in this community really deserve the best education that we can provide here in this community. So that's probably one of the biggies. I think we also gathered a lot of analysis around the school itself and the buildings, so kind of an additional building analysis, if you will. So Bray Architects is the architect firm that we had brought on as a board, and they did a nice job breaking down the middle school and the high school and what the needs are, you know, within each of those facilities. So trying to provide it as much as we can in an executive summary type format, knowing that not everybody maybe has the attention span to go through the entire lot of detail. So I think those executive summaries will be very helpful, and particularly as we get to this next phase here, where we've got our meeting coming up on September 2nd, there'll be a lot of detail for people to get before that meeting, as well as executive summaries during that evening's event.
So these executive summaries will be available ahead of time before this meeting on the 2nd?
Also the raw data that went into the executive summary. It's not just, it's all of the data that we've gathered.
So there will presumably be some sort of a reading list for it coming ahead of time before this meeting.
And we want them to get it as early as possible. You know, we're starting to send emails out and try and communicate it through as many different mediums as we can. Hudsonite might be a real good one for us to communicate through. But, you know, whether it's getting information in the paper, you know, trying to post things on Twitter, Facebook, you know, when we got through stage 2, I think it was stage 2 where we had put some kits together and actually left them at the library. We've tried a lot of different ways to make sure that every individual has an opportunity through whatever channel they want to get the information at.
And it's kind of been hit or miss, but we're hoping that we're moving to a point where we're going to get as many people as possible to come forward.
What we've heard from the community is that some people felt a little hesitant at first because they didn't feel qualified to be telling what 21st century learning ought to look like. But when we get closer to creating and identifying, creating, developing these options, there are people who have ideas of what would be best for our secondary space. And so there's a lot of people that wanted to jump right to that, but there is a reason that the process kind of builds on itself. And now it's going to culminate on September 2nd when we can get the community to come together to our workshop, which is at the middle school, September 2nd at 6:30 p.m.
6:30.
What exactly is going to take place during this workshop? Who's it for? What's going to take place?
For everybody and his brother. We're beating the bushes to try to get everybody to come, and we're going to lay out what we thought we've heard in phase 3 in terms of options, and what we've heard from the people. That's going to be put together in a list of options, but we're also going to give people opportunity to come up with their own options. So it's the idea of them spend an hour and a half in small breakout groups and deliberate on what's on the table and what thoughts might bubble up as part of their group. And that's what we hope to achieve.
Yeah, they're not, the options themselves are not fully baked options. They're options that are kind of a shell, if you will.
Based on ideas given to us by the community in stage 3.
Right, so we really tried to put them in the appropriate buckets, and from there, it's really the opportunity to build those out and make sure that we get as much feedback that we can from the community around what makes the most sense. In addition to that, Bray's taken a look at them, Bray Architects, and they've put some rough ballpark numbers to those different options. So that will help as well, and it's a range, right? Because you can't go in and have something that's exactly definitive. There's a lot of different potential ways to go with these different solutions. So ideally, the goal is to get to whether it's 12, 15, 20 different options that we're going to be taking and bringing that back amongst the board that will then deliberate from there.
That's what I was going to ask, was how many options? How many options are you going to be putting on the table at this workshop?
Yeah, there's I believe there's 12 if I'm not mistaken, or
well,
there's
basically
11
with one of them being
2A
tweaked, right.
and 2B.
Okay.
And then the last option is a completely blank option that people will be able to build upon.
Okay.
So, and we see this dividing into this small groups. We're going to try and plan, regardless of what the turnout's going to be, but people don't have to be worried about getting up in front of 400 people and talking, because we want everyone involved. We want to break into as many small groups as we can facilitate into and create a atmosphere of just open-ended discussion, but that is directed too, because what we want, the deliverable out of this, is to have options that have advantages and disadvantages with comments identified with each. And we're kind of going to break it out generally with a solution that might be building new high school, whether that's 2-year, 3-year, 4-year. The next groupings of suggestions that we got from the community was something regarding middle school, whether it's an 8-9, another 6-7-8, a 6-7 building. There's all kinds of variations off of a middle school build. Then there's a group of options that would be remodels of what we already have without expanding to any new sites. And then there's a fourth option that came out of the community, which was maybe building a new elementary school to take the place of Hudson Prairie and expand the middle school. Now, as Paul or Bruce said, we're not leading saying that these got to be the options. If the community decides this is not, and the small group decides we don't want to spend the time listing the advantages and disadvantages because none of us like that one, or we want to take that option in a new direction, there are not going to be any constrictions on that.
You're still open if somebody has a brilliant idea that they want to share with you and have it vetted by the community.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Great. So what are the next steps after this meeting?
Well, ideally we'll get that information back. We'll synthesize that, make sure we get it down into something that's manageable, something that we can read out. I think the PST is probably happy to get to a point where they're handing this off to the board. Around September 29th, again, assuming we've got enough detail, the board will then have a scheduled hearing in which we're going to invite all members from the community again to participate and provide feedback to the board. So now we're going to have this kind of to a point where we're going to winnow the solutions down to maybe 3 or 4 final solutions that, again, through feedback from the community, not just the board making a decision to say, we're going to break this down to 3 or 4, but really try and get as much feedback as we can from the community on those final 3 or 4 options. Once we get through those final 3 or 4, the board just last week, I believe, Jamie, maybe the weeks are all going together, but we will, as a board, be putting out a survey through school perceptions through the entire community to actually, again, get more granular with the solution and provide more detail to the community and try and get additional feedback on the direction that we need to take this. Our hope as a board is really to have the community come up with a solution, not be something that the board's trying to dictate to the community is the right thing, but through the community and through what we're going to support as a whole, that we're going to get to the right solution that we'll be able to finally move past this and start focusing on the right thing, which is how to advance the education for our kids.
Great.
And I agree with what Bruce is saying. I just don't want something skipped over, and that is if people can't make September 2nd, which I know that people have schedule conflicts and so forth, it's going to be about a 2.5-hour workshop, and maybe they don't have a whole 2.5 hours to be there. Stuff is going to be put online, and we're going to have access to all the information, like Paul said. Nothing's going to be, we'll try to have a summary, but we'll also have the raw data if they want to see that. But giving folks a chance for another 3 weeks, probably till September 24th, to register their comments about what we're doing through that time prior to that September 29th board listening session.
Okay. And where can people leave their comments?
hudson.k12.wi.us.
Okay, just the school district's website. There will be links right there.
It's right on the front page usually.
Yep.
Posted right front and center.
Great. That's about all the major questions I have. Is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything else that you all would like to add?
Show up on September 2nd. That's we need bodies.
Yeah, and thanks to all those that have participated thus far. There have been a lot of the same faces that we've been seeing throughout the entire process. Thanks to the PST community members for the amount of time and energy and effort.
Amen.
It has been exhaustive for them. I'm sure none of them anticipated the amount of time and energy that was going to go into it when this was set up. But I do feel, at least from my perspective, that we are making a lot of good progress, and genuinely hopeful that the community gets behind the decision here that we're collectively coming up with to support and continue to grow Hudson.
Great.
We feel very good about where we're at. Going back to that original promise that we made when we started this community engagement process and looking at the IAPP model, we had said how we wanted to involve, and we've gone, I think, beyond involving, and we're collaborating at every stage with the community. And so anyone who says this was a predetermined outcome or I didn't get my chance to have input, they won't have any credibility, because the options for input have been continuous and will continue even beyond September 2nd.
Okay.
But it would be the best opportunity for them to show up.
Absolutely.
So the bottom line is don't wait. Show up on September 2nd. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mike.